Welcome to the Top Advisor Marketing Podcast, brought to you by ProudMouth. I'm your host, Matt Halloran. Being your own loud is not new to marketing, but the mindset, strategies, and resources to help you get there are evolving faster than this industry is keeping up. It is time to find a new perspective on what works why and how to move your business forward. Listen as I interview guests to help you learn from them how to be your own loud. Let's get to the show. Hello and welcome to another Top Advisor Marketing Podcast. I am your host, Matt Halloran. You know, I don't really think it's been too many times that we've had an actual client on the podcast. And this isn't a shameless plug, just to be fundamentally clear, that one, you should be a client of ProudMouth, because what our guest was doing before he ever started a podcast was so powerful and entirely in line with everything that we believe here. One, he's got a niche, a real one, and knows their language. Number two, he's unapologetically himself. And number three, his brand is on point. So we're going to talk to Darren today about a couple of different things. We're going to talk about his niche. We're going to talk about their book writing experience. We're going to talk about his podcast and how he gained confidence in making sure that he was going to focus on a very narrow niche that a lot of you are still afraid to do. So Darren, welcome to the show, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt. I'm excited to be here.
All right, well, let's just jump right in because I want to jump into this idea. Why did you create, or why did you go after lawyers as a niche? And let's be as specific as we can about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't my first choice, to be honest. It did take me a while to kind of come around to the niche marketing idea. To give you a little bit of background, I came to the financial advising world from a teaching background. I was an 8th and 9th grade science teacher for 5 years. And this is a family business. So kind of came into the business. My dad was real old school, going through the phone book and dialing numbers, kind of old school. And I kind of had to learn how to market. I had no idea how to market. What is marketing? I had been a teacher my whole life. I knew how to be a financial advisor. But it's like, okay, well, running a business and marketing, that's a whole different thing there. And I was like most advisors, I was kind of scared to narrow it down. So, at first it's like, hey, and now I started my own office. And so that's scary. So it's kind of like, okay, hey, anybody and everybody, you got, $100 to invest, I'll be your financial advisor. But as the business grew, I started to think more specifically, and I kind of narrowed it down to people close to retirement, which is still very, very broad, to be honest. And then, honestly, I have to give credit to my brother, because my brother kind of came into the business a few years after me, and he didn't know what to do, and I didn't really know how to help him either as far as getting his business going and finding clients. And so I kind of just suggested to him that he start reaching out to realtors, because they're easy to find, they'll answer their phone, they're interested in networking and that kind of thing. And he started doing that, and he actually had a lot of great success with it. And so I was like, hang on a minute, I can do this too. So the way I chose attorneys is I really just looked through my existing client base, and I was like, okay, what group of people is highly represented here? What common themes am I seeing? And, I had a lot of clients who are already attorneys. One of my first big breaks was there was a big law firm in Cincinnati that was kind of shutting down, and the attorneys were kind of going their own ways. It was like a group of like 5 or 6 attorneys, and they needed someone to come in and talk with folks who didn't have an advisor or who needed help with their 401k balances. So all of a sudden I had a bunch of new clients that were attorneys, and I started to learn about some of the challenges they faced and that sort of thing. And so I was like, okay, let's kind of explore this. Let's see if this is something that could work. And I didn't really think there was much different about attorneys, but you know what? As I started to really hone in, I started to learn so much about the legal world and just how unique attorneys are and some of the unique things that they face. So that's kind of how I came around to the idea.
There's I'm trying to figure out which question I want to go to next. When you initially get into a niche, it's interesting because you said the same thing everybody else does. I didn't really think it was going to be that niche-y, right? But as you continue to dive in more deeply and you realize that there are some fundamental personality difference, business challenges, personal issues, work-life balance, all of the different things that each, discipline, for lack of a better description, or each niche would really have. When you start learning that language, that changes everything. Now, I've never asked anybody this, and I wasn't planning on asking you this. Was there like a trigger? So, I mean, besides your brother having success with real estate agents, when you think about where you felt you needed to be to hyper focus, was there like a number? Like, did you have to have X amount of assets under management or X amount of revenue before you felt comfortable? Or was the epiphany from your brother and you looking in your book of business enough to make you focus?
That was really kind of enough, I think. And it was a transition. It wasn't overnight that I said, okay, let's just go into attorneys. You know what I mean? I kind of initially had kind of a dual focus. So it was, attorneys and folks close to retirement. So I was kind of sort of slowly blending it in. And before I really went full speed, I started doing some, networking with like the local bar association, doing some CLE courses on different financial topics for attorneys, and started kind of marketing and getting involved in the attorney world. So it's kind of slowly dipping my toes into the water. But I'll tell you what, the trigger was the pandemic.
Gotcha.
That was the trigger. Because all of a sudden, all the traditional things that I had been doing were dead. Networking was gone. There wasn't anything you could do. There weren't any, most of what I had done was real local. It was really focused on the community. So I did a lot of, chamber events and things like that. But that was all gone. I'm like, okay, what do I do? So I'm like, you know what? Let's just go. We're going to go all in on the attorney thing. We changed the website. We updated everything. And I just made that my main focus. And and then a lot of what I started to do were webinars focused on attorneys. And then that's when everything just started to, culminate, because I was having success with that. And then it was like, okay, what's next? And then the book, and then the podcast, and boom, here we are.
I thank you for lining that sequence out, right? Because I think a lot of people, Darren, they're just so concerned about where they're going to start, especially with a niche. And I love how you said you dipped your toe in the water, right? I think a lot of people think that it's like a light switch, right? That all of a sudden I'm only going to work with nurse anesthetists. No, come on, man. Work towards that. But I think that there seems to be accelerants, which is always something that's very interesting to me when we have these conversations with professionals who do have a very specific focus. Let's talk about the book. So the webinars were going well. Writing a book's a big deal, man. And you know that. Do you just very quickly kind of talk about the process? Did you self-publish and then, what do you do with the books?
Yeah. So I have to tell you, this is really still is very fresh. So the book came out in August of last year. So this is all still very new, even to me, but it was really a pandemic project. The book idea came first. I was looking for resources that could help me become a better financial advisor for my attorney clients. And I didn't find anything out there. There were a couple of books written on financial planning for attorneys, but they were really broad, I felt like, and they were really vague, or it was real focused on, retirement issues like Medicare and Social Security. And that's good. But, what's real specific? What's real focused? And so I'm like, okay, well, why don't I write the book? And I kind of already had the idea, the concept that writing a book would be a good idea for marketing. And so it was kind of always in the back of my brain. But again, the trigger was the pandemic. And, business was kind of slow. So it was a good opportunity for me to kind of get started on that project. I had a lot of extra time on my hands, as many of us did. And so I sat down, I started writing it. And actually, what I first did is I wrote a proposal for the American Bar Association. I figured if I was going to get it published, I thought about self-publishing. I thought about having an actual publisher publish it, and weighed those out. There's a lot of benefits to self-publishing because you have a lot of ownership in, everything that goes on. But I thought having, someone like the American Bar Association put their stamp on it would be really awesome, right? So I reached out to them. I wrote them a proposal. My first proposal got turned down, and I was like, okay, that's perfectly fine. I will just go ahead and I'll self-publish it. So it took me about a year to write the book. I would just spend a couple of hours each day writing, get a couple pages done each day. And once I had a completed manuscript, I reached out to the American Bar Association again, but I was pretty sure I was going to self-publish at this point. So I had done all the research. I had, kind of gotten myself set up with Amazon and was exploring some book cover designers and things like that. And I said, what the heck? Let's try the American Bar Association again. So I reached out to him. I said, that proposal I sent you last year? Well, the manuscript is finished and it's ready to go. And it's a lot more marketable at that point because it's like, okay, it's here. There's nothing you got to wait for. You don't have to worry about, me writing the chapters. And they actually accepted my proposal. So I was pretty pumped. That was a pretty awesome thing. And it took them about a year then to publish it. So it had to go through several different stages of proofreading and editing and peer review and stuff like that. And then it finally was able to get out there. So yeah, that was how that went.
Man, you gave a book to lawyers, dude. That's correct. All right. Well, first off, congratulations on stepping back up to the plate, because, as an author of 2 books myself, it's a totally different situation when the manuscript is done and you're like, hey, I'm shopping a manuscript. It's very different than shopping an idea, and getting it, basically rubber stamped by the American Bar Association is absolutely fantastic. I'm going to take one quick step back because you just triggered something you had said earlier, which is you were doing CLEs for attorneys. Now, for those of you who don't know what that means, that's basically continuing education, right? Is basically what that is. And CPAs have that. Really, everybody's got that. And if you can find a way to provide continuing education for your niche, man, that is such a wonderful foot in the door.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah.
Webinars, website, book. And then for some strange reason, you decided you wanted to start a podcast. So talk about that. Why did you go in that direction?
Really, it was a way to promote so I knew the book was going to be coming out in August. So we launched the podcast in like April. And I thought it would be a good way to kind of get some buzz going and, kind of build some energy towards the book being released. So we had a podcast release party and all kinds of fun stuff. And, but as I'm doing it more, I'm realizing it's such a cool, awesome venue. And we talk about topics in the book, but then I'm also excited because I get to have guests on, real attorneys who can talk about their experiences, what they're dealing with, what their challenges are. It gives me an opportunity to meet new folks. And it's always, it's perpetually then marketing the book and everything else. So yeah, it was a way to market the book, and it is still. But then, of course, it has kind of become its own awesome venue that I can use. Yeah.
Since I don't usually have a lot of existing clients on the show, I figure I'm going to play my own devil's advocate, Darren, if you don't mind. Okay. What is the hardest part about podcasting?
What's the hardest part? Well, you guys make it really easy, so that's great.
Well, thanks for that answer, brother. He's not paid to do that, everybody, but I do appreciate that.
Well, it's true because I was going to start a podcast on my own, and that's kind of how I got interested in you guys. And I was going to do like real quick, 10-minute episodes, maybe once a week or something. And I put one of them together, and it took me like an entire week just to put it together. And then I was like, okay, there is no possible way this is sustainable. So that's what I would say. The hardest thing is getting it done. Having the gumption to create the podcast, to get it together, to put it out there. Probably getting started too, I think would be a really just having getting that initial momentum, getting started, but definitely having you guys to work with keeps me engaged, keeps me accountable, keeps the program going. Because, we've all seen those podcasts where you're looking at it and you're like, wait a minute, the last episode was like 4 months ago. What's happening? So when you have it, it's regular, it's coming out on a regular basis. I don't know, I'm sure that's a secret to success. I haven't been podcasting that long to know, but I'm pretty sure that that's a good thing. So that is for sure. one of the most challenging things. I think also I have a deep appreciation for what a skill this is. And, I've done 13 episodes so far, and we're going to be going to 2 episodes a month starting in April. So I'm super pumped about that. Well, here's the thing, right? I have the episodes like planned out into a year from now, because I have so many ideas and I have so many people that want to be on the show. So I'm like, oh crap, I need to do more. I need to do 2 episodes a month versus 1. But I'm learning, like, I need to really refine my skill as an interviewer. Like, there is really a talent to being a good interviewer, to making it natural. And my first few episodes, I just remember being so nervous. And I learned a lot about some of the nervous tics that I have. One of them is laughing. I tend to laugh a lot if I'm nervous. So hopefully that's not, these are good laughs. These are not nervous laughs, but that's one of them. So you learn a lot about some of those unique things, and you learn a lot about just how much skill and talent there really is involved. So I started Googling, like, what are some of the best ways to interview, tips on being a great podcast interviewer and things like that. There's a lot to learn. Yeah.
I want to touch on that very quickly. So I have some heroes in the world of interviewing. Oprah Winfrey. And the reason why I always love watching Oprah is because Oprah can have a guest in front of an audience of 10,000 people, and that guest doesn't feel like anybody else is there because she draws you in. So she's like one of the best of the best. Another one is a lady named Terry Gross, and she does NPR. She does it's called Fresh Air. Terry's interviewed everybody. And one of the things that I love about Terry Gross is she's fearless. Like, she interviewed Prince, right? I mean, like 3 or 4 times, David Bowie, right? The greatest authors and actors and actresses. It's amazing. And she's always fearless. Number 3, Phil Donahue. And that's showing my age here, because not a lot of people remember who he is. But one of the things that Phil did very, very well was he used silence. And that is one of the most powerful interviewing techniques that I don't think a lot of people realize, is shutting up and letting your guest talk without making verbal ahas. Oh yeah, because that's really distracting to the listener. Does it make you feel good? And are you thinking it makes your guest feel good? Yes, but it's actually a very, very bad podcasting technique. And then my last one is Larry King. And one of the reasons why I like Larry King, not as a human being, because he had some questionable stuff in his life, but there's an interview that he did with Jerry Seinfeld, and Jerry Seinfeld got so mad at him because he was like, how do you not know the answers to these questions? Because he was asking really basic Seinfeld questions, and Jerry Seinfeld was getting upset. And Larry looked at him, this was on TV, right? He looked at him and he goes, Jerry, I'm asking you the questions I know my people want to hear. This isn't about how smart Larry King is. This is about how well I can get you to answer questions that I know my audience likes. And I absolutely love that. And shameless plug, Darren, is in the Academy, the PodRocket Academy, which you have access to as a client. I did advanced interviewing techniques. It was a 301 level class, which is hands down the best, I think the best class I've ever done, because I draw on my life as a therapist, doing over 1,000 interviews, what I, motivational interviewing stuff from being a coach, all of those sorts of things. And it's a really, really good course. And it's actually going to be the premise of my next book, because as you went around out there, right, and started looking for how to be a great podcast host, a lot of it's like, yeah, I knew that. Yep. I know I need to stop saying so much. All right. So webinars, niche, book, continuing education, you have a podcast now. What's next, dude? What do you, besides increasing your frequency of your show, which you just said you're going to be doing soon, what is next on your horizon?
That is really a great question. I think definitely increasing the frequency is going to be a good next step. I'm really excited about that. And I think I want to be a lot more, well, one thing I already mentioned was improving my skills. I definitely see myself now as a podcast host. That's my job, one of my job titles. So the other thing is being more strategic about who I have on and trying to get bigger and better guests, because I think that's really important. At first I was, I had so many people that wanted to be on, And I really wanted to give deference to, current clients, people that I wanted to reward, and show my appreciation for their help and their business by having them on the podcast. But now I want to think about, having people on who have like really great social media reach and stuff like that, so I can tap into their social networks and trying to be a lot more strategic that way. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the Pod Rocket Academy. That's definitely on my to-do list to get in there. And I think I went through the lower level classes, but I want to advance up and take advantage of some of those resources.
If you could wave a magic wand, dude, what attorney do you want on your show?
Oh gosh. The biggest law firm is Morgan and Morgan. Personal injury. I'd love to have one of their higher ups or even their founder on the show. I think that would be really fantastic. Or there's some other folks that are pretty well known in the legal space. So there's a lot of people who do marketing for law firms that have really good social following among attorneys. And so I think that would be a good strategic alliance to do something like that. The other thing too, and this is what I want to do kind of a book tour. I am going to be in Kansas City in October, I believe. I could be wrong, but maybe it's August. Anyway, it's in the fall for the American Bar Association's solo and small practice conference. And I'm going to be doing a CLE there on retirement planning for attorneys. And I want to go and do that same presentation at bar associations everywhere I can, really, and get the news out about the book. And so that's kind of my next phase, would be doing something like that and working on that.
How come the bar association, if they basically endorsed your book, why aren't they promoting your podcast?
They are a little bit. I was on their podcast. Actually, that episode will air pretty soon here. Because I'm not an attorney, I'm a financial advisor. So I think they are a little bit cautious. They don't want to necessarily promote it too heavily, but they have done some good promotion. Their main interest, of course, is in promoting the book, I think. But they have allowed me to get the news out a little bit about the podcast as well. So that's been nice. Yeah.
One of the other techniques that I highly recommend, and being on the Bar Association's podcast is getting yourself on attorneys' podcasts, right? Especially marketing agencies that work with attorneys, anything like that you can, because we know that attorneys listen to other attorneys' podcasts because they want to know what they're doing. And, and I think I shared this with you when you were coming on board here. We grew our whole business, being on other people's podcasts and having those influential guests. One of my favorite stories, and I think I might have shared this. I know I've shared it on the podcast, but when we first started, I had a hot list of people who I wanted on the show. They're like the big names in financial services. And out of the 10 that were on that list, only one said no. Only one said no. And he still won't be on the show. And I have no idea what this dude's issue is, but big names, because I just had the gumption to ask, right? It's that whole idea of, and my old mentor used to say this all the time. It's persistency. It's persistence mixed with stupidity, which is the perfect entrepreneurial skill. And I have that in spades, my friend. So I have no problem. And here's the deal. I don't have any problem asking anybody to be on the show. One, because I've had success in the past, much like you. That's why I asked you the question. So, all right, my favorite question for all of the shows that I do is this one question, which is, what should I have asked you that I didn't?
I think the big question would be, how has it been going in terms of niche marketing? And I would say really well. Everything has changed, really. In fact, I'm downsizing my physical office in Cincinnati to a smaller co-working space because I have fewer in-person meetings. And actually, since I've been hyper-focused on attorneys, my business has really gone nationwide. So I have attorney clients in New Jersey, Florida, California, South Carolina, all over the place. Folks who I've never met. But they, thanks to technology, we feel like we know each other very well. We've gotten to know each other very well, and we're working together, and that's really been an amazing thing for me to experience. So I would just encourage people. And the other thing too is, don't be afraid. I mean, I my niche is lawyers now, but even I feel like that is too broad, to be quite honest. So, you can narrow way down. I mean, within the field of attorneys, you have personal injury attorneys, which are very, very unique. You have solo attorneys. You have attorneys at big law firms. I mean, there are these different groups that all have these unique special characteristics themselves. So, you might have a focus on doctors, but there's a whole bunch of variety within the medical field. So, once you start really exploring, don't be afraid to really drill down. That would be my advice to offer.
And absolutely fantastic advice. Well, okay. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, or if somebody wants to learn more from you, what should they do next?
Yeah, you can go to the website. Just type in theLawyerMillionaire.com. They'll take you to my webpage. You can learn about the book. You can purchase the book if you're interested in that. And there's my contact information there as well.
Listen, everybody, if you want to know what the right format for a book is in order for you to publish something like what our guest today has done, buy the book. The other really great thing is, if you do want to work with attorneys, buy the book. If you want to know about what it's like to work with attorneys, listen to his podcast, right? I mean, there's so much great information. One of the coolest things that's happened in this new influence, sort of situation that we're here, and also the expertise economy, is when you give it all away, which, I mean, your people need to buy the book, but you're still giving away lots of your sauce here, brother. It's all of a sudden you're going to draw fans, right? And you're already seeing that. I love when you said, I've never met these people. Even though I feel like I know them and they think they know me. That's because they do, right? I joke all the time with people who ask me, Matt, how do you run a virtual company with 34 employees? And I was like, look, I've only actually seen my business partner in person like less than 8 times, maybe 10 in person. We've been a business partner for 5 years, right? But I see him almost every day, virtually like this. And there's a lot to be said with this interface being a great way to build relationships. All right. Well, Darren, dude, thank you so much. One, thank you for being a client. We really appreciate you. My team loves working with you. They love your content. Your branding is on point. The book is awesome. The podcast is great. You're getting better and better and better. Just all you can ever ask for. And it makes me happy that one of your job descriptions is being a podcast host. That makes me really happy too. So thanks for being on the show, man.
Thank you so much for having me, Matt. It's been great.
All right, Pod Rocket Academy, everybody. You guys hear me talk about it all the time. Listen, just join. You can join for free, right? There's paid levels, which we'd appreciate that too. But listen, if you want to learn how to start your show, and if you're really, really struggling, or if maybe you've done what Darren did at the beginning, which is, he started recording an episode and realized, holy crap, this is a whole bunch of work. Well, he didn't join the Academy back then because it wasn't around, but it is now. So if you really want to learn how to start your own podcast, Podcasting 101 is a free course in the Pod Rocket Academy. And if you also pay attention to some of our email communications, you can also take something called the Influence Score, which is a quick 5-minute test for you to find out how influential you are to your ideal clients and if you're doing the right behaviors. So for Darren and everybody here at ProudMouth, this is Matt Halloran. We'll see you on the other side of the mic very soon. Thanks for listening to the Top Advisor Marketing Podcast, brought to you by ProudMouth. If you want to know more about how you can be your own loud, visit us at ProudMouth.com. and sign up for the Pod Rocket Academy. Through courses and office hours led by professional podcast producers and digital marketers, you will learn everything you need to know to become the trusted subject matter expert you are meant to be.